Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Healthcare Leadership Live. My name is Mike Lyons. We're back with another show here. And this is a show where I like to talk about leadership in healthcare, and I like to provide actionable and useful tips for healthcare leaders to be better in their jobs every day. And so today's guest is a finance expert in healthcare. He's someone that I've had the opportunity to work with, just one of the genuine good guys in the healthcare business, has seen a lot. And I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say. And we're going to have a conversation. One thing before we get started, if you're on LinkedIn, then you can share a comment or a question with Mitt and myself just by commenting on the feed. So throw a comment or a question in about our topic, and we will answer it right here live on the LinkedIn Live. So I want to encourage you to do that, even if you just want to wave and say hello. If you want to tell me what you think about my hat, that's fine too. We just like to hear from you. We want this to be interactive because we're super engaging and fascinating, but y'all's questions are really where it's at. So with that, I want to introduce Mitt Mehta. He is an experienced healthcare CFO, and welcome to the show, Mitt.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate being on here and having this candid live conversation with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, give us like a really short summary of, what you do in healthcare finance and why do you do it?
Um, Interesting question. So I think several years ago I stumbled into healthcare in the allergy space and may have committed a sin in my past life, or it just happened out of the blue. Uh, so just ended up in that space, and as I jumped in, I saw a flurry of opportunity, of a lot of good things to do to transform healthcare. So
Mm,
it was an exciting step in the right direction, and you know, over time, been called a friendly finance guy, the restructuring guy, different names, but I think the end goal has been to, make healthcare a better place and an area where there's self sustainability for the long term.
mm,
That's been my focus and goal in most of these practices. Had the privilege to scale up allergy, ENT, urgent care, and dermatology.
hmm
So those have been some of the verticals I've scaled up. Similar models, similar setting where you deal with payers and all the different uh, you know uh, contexts and frameworks, staffing frameworks and all that. So.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. So you've worked in a few different specialties, and I'm sure we have people here watching who are from various backgrounds. And so that's awesome to hear. You talked about sustainability, and so what I was hoping we could talk about today was share information that would be useful for the independent practice, and maybe the doctor that wants to stay independent, maybe the independent doctor that wants to sell their practice at some point. And then also, hopefully, we can talk about and talk to the groups that are part of a roll up or a PE group, or even some PE folks who are on the corporate side. Because I think that's where you've mainly been, is you've been on the PE corporate side. And so I think you have a great perspective on all that stuff. So if we could let's start thinking about the doctor who's independent, and they want to stay independent. They want to run a great operation. One question. So first of all, I'm not a finance guy, so I'm probably going to ask questions that make that super easy questions. So don't
I'll
beat
try
me
to
up.
simplify it as much as
Simplify, yeah. So like if I'm a doctor, maybe I've got a few providers in my practice, or maybe it's just me, but like from a finance perspective, what are some things that the basic things that I should be doing if I want to continue to have a sustainable independent practice?
So, good question. I would say that from an independent perspective, it's understanding the doctor's goals first. What is the goal framework that that provider has and that doctor has with his business venture that is set up? Does he have multiple practices? Is he just solo, just running one clinic, multiple clinics? So that kind of sets the baseline whether the that doctor is venturesome and wanting to scale themselves, or they're pretty much like independent and they run their clinic and they're satisfied with that
Mm,
model and not want to add additional layers to it. So I would say from a standpoint of an independent doctor in a setting that is running solo on their own, in just one clinic or one or two clinics, so occasional a visit to do surgeries occasionally and come back to their base clinic and all that. I would say that it's typically wanting to diversify their earnings for the long term. So it's all about like, okay, do they want to retire early? Do they want to
mhm,
retire a little bit later down the road? Or do they want to cash out to earn money in some other sectors potentially? Right. So that's typically the intention of that provider that's running that one small business clinic setup from that perspective. From the venture firm idea, it's like more like they want to still stay in the game and grow and scale with the private equity from that perspective. So that typically is a scenario where they're taking that group of practices network that they have built over the last several years and wanting to super scale it. And typically PEs are known for super scaling uh, by combining multiple practices or going and building new de novo new locations to go ahead and scale that even further up.
mhm.
So those are the ideal routes. I would say with your question was, what do they need to consider, right?
Mhm.
They need to consider from a financial picture. I would say they first need to connect with a financial advisor. They need to know what their financial position looks like.
Mm,
It shouldn't just be an arbitrary decision. And I think that's where a lot of private equities take the opportunity, if it's arbitrary, to jump in and hawk in and take that value away from the provider. So
mm,
I would tend to say that, make an assessment of what is their potential, how many years do they still want to coexist with the practice, and what the next phase in their life is from a financial picture.
mm,
Typically, the best thing is when they're scaling up in either setting, they have to ensure for themselves they're getting the maximum value for their practice upfront.
mm.
And typically, there's roll-in strategies and all that come in. But for a provider to be successful, they have to get that maximum value up front.
Gotcha. So yeah, so we're talking about folks that maybe want to grow and scale. And I think, if you're an independent, if you're an independent clinician, you're probably entrepreneurial minded, right? You have a business mindset. You probably don't want to just, maybe you want to have a lifestyle business, but I think most doctors, it does seem like they do want to grow. So let's go down this outside investment pathway here.
Mhm.
What can a provider do or a practice do to, you talked about knowing where you're at now so that you
Yeah.
can't have your value stolen away from you, right? what can you, other than that, how can you best position yourself to be attractive to outside investment groups?
So I think it's in healthcare, it's purely margin management. In other industries, there's more like revenue focus. In healthcare, I think what tends to happen is there's a max capacity that a provider reaches, a number of visits they can see. They're not robots. They can only see X number of patients at some point to give a fair treatment plan to their patients.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, I would say that then it turns into a margin management, right? Like if you maxed out your revenue potential and you have X margin on the bottom line, so then it's more like, okay, what can you do to potentially adjust your costs to bring that margin higher, the growth margin higher? And I think it shouldn't be cost centric, but I feel it should be more like understanding the dynamics of today's environment. There's a lot of stuff out there that can be done fractionally at a fractional of a cost. There are services that can be bought at a fractional of a cost. So I think it's just coming to the realization that you can get better and better equivalent, highly valuable support for a similar to a lower cost. So taking advantage of those goes a long ways.
Mm.
And then
Yeah,
from
I'm I'm definitely a believer in fractional support. As a fractional HR service provider in healthcare, I'm definitely a believer in that. And I have seen the best practices are lean. They operate with a lean mindset, and there's many that can mean a lot of different things. It can take you down a lot of different roads. And now, one place where my brain is going with that is outsourcing things like revenue cycle management. And I've seen it in house, I've seen it outsourced. What are your thoughts about outsourcing RCM and billing and collections? How can it be done well? Can in-house be done well? What are your thoughts there?
I think outsourcing can be done well, but I think the biggest trend I've seen in RCM lately is a hybrid approach, is having at least some key staff, in-sourced staff that support and oversee that effort,
Mm,
along with an outsourced support staff that will actually do some of the tedious, repetitive work. And as we evolve, that repetitive work will be transformed with AI anyway.
mhm,
So I foresee that the best approach in RCM is a hybrid, and it does work really well. I think some people have a bias around just being fully insourced, and some have a bias fully outsourced. I'm not saying they don't work; they work. I prefer the hybrid so that there is better collaboration. And the hybrid approach, the value of a hybrid approach is that only generates when you have that true communication and partnership.
mm.
When that breaks, then no matter whether you have insource or outsource, it's going to be broken
I
anyway.
think that's a great point because yeah, if internally you can mess up with bad communication and management, same for external. Neither one is a panacea, right?
Yeah. And I think those who are the insource staff, I think it's more advisable to have staff that are open to outsource if they want to engage in a hybrid approach, and have that commitment from an HR perspective. Like, okay, no, their jobs are not going anywhere. They're going to be taken care of. They're enabling some of the repetitive and tedious work from an outsourcing model, but that person should have some leadership qualities, be able to take on that responsibility to own that
Mhm.
process while it's outsourced and qualify it and manage it accordingly from that perspective. So it works. I think fully outsourced becomes broken because some leaders just decide to dump it and say, okay, here you go, take it all, do it for me. I don't care. We don't have the support, and just let go of the entire team.
Mm.
That doesn't work because that's where the breakages start. Even if you have the best in class outsourced team, they will struggle to understand the internal dynamics of the clinic and what
Mm.
actually gets billed, what needs to be credentialed, all that good stuff.
Yeah, that can be very problematic, as I think we've both probably seen in our experience. What about, let's think about mistakes that you've seen made. We talked about maybe fully outsourcing without good communication. Let's going back to the independent doctor and independent clinic. Maybe they want to sell, maybe they don't, but what are some mistakes that you've seen people make, or that you think doctors are making out there that they could easily avoid from a finance perspective?
Um, I think it's the biggest factor I've seen in the. I think the generational dynamic is potentially changing. I think doctors have been naive
Mm,
to a lot of the proposed, financial engagements people have had. Right. I think it's more like if that doctor was entrepreneurial, they're more likely to be successful
mm,
rather than being just a operator running the doctor's clinic without that entrepreneurial mindset.
mm,
So I think they have to have that entrepreneurial mind frame or have someone in that practice that has that entrepreneurial mindset to grow and scale that business potentially. I think that's important. The other factor is in trying to approach private equities and investors and all that. They have to keep in mind that there's always financial tricks under
mm,
the belt. So what tends to happen is, understand what multiple they're getting on their practice.
mm,
Understand it's something that satisfies them, right? Like there's a famous saying, one person's trash is someone else's gold, right? So I feel like, what I've noticed in the PE space is, knowing how to take something right at that valuation and immediately grow it just because of scale from that perspective.
mm-hmm.
So I think it's all about what is the true value that they want to retain, and where do they want to take it from that perspective.
Yeah, yeah. Want to shift gears a little bit. So you recently posted a article on Forbes.com, and you talked about where we've come in the world of, healthcare scaling, and where we might be headed. And before I go on, I just want to remind anybody listening, if you have a question or a comment, please share that. We love that. Haven't seen any comments come through just yet. But please share a comment or question. Mitt has a ton of knowledge, and he's a great connection as well if you're in the healthcare space. So we will respond to questions live here. But going back to that, you posted an article on Forbes.com, which congratulations, by the way. I have yet to be a Forbes published author myself, but it's wonderful to be in the sunshine of such a published luminary such as yourself. But tell us about where you think, where we're coming from, and maybe what hasn't worked as well in the world of private equity and scaling healthcare, and where you think groups, PE groups, and investors could think better about healthcare moving forward?
Yeah. So I'll focus on healthcare a little bit more because I have a totally opposite opinion of other industries out there, and it's totally opposite. So I wouldn't take this advice or this opinion based on what we see today in other industries, but I think healthcare is one of the industries that's struggling in the private equity space
Mm.
across the board. Part of this is that it expeditiously grew. So it was just all about hyperscale growth.
Yeah.
So everyone during that bullish time frame just tried to hyperscale growth the entire model. Uh, Typically, private equities set targets on their funds when they initiate their funds, and it's a 6 year, typically 6 year. What we've come to realization is that 6 years is not always the best scenario for healthcare. From a growth trajectory perspective, there is more time needed. Anywhere from like 10 years or 9, 10 years expected growth projection if you want to grow it strategically and hyperscale it over the long horizon. So I think some peak groups come into this desperation phase that once their fund comes to a maturity or something, no matter what the situation is, they have to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, this is it. This is the final straw. This is what we're going to do. And they're going to exit this fund. And then, or either roll it into a new fund and keep it going on potentially. I feel that that has been detrimental to a lot of healthcare businesses, and I personally would correlate it to a little bit on the HR side too. Only with the function that when we put in the energy and momentum in management employees or support staff that are in there, only know that they only have X life in that process.
Mm.
So what ends up happening there is that the motivation deteriorates. So it's like a ticking time bomb. So what can you do in the next year or two to turn things around? So you're always like running at a fast
Mm.
pace,
Mm.
trying to do a catch up game. So it's good and bad. You learn a lot in a
Yeah.
short time, but the goals are very outrageous and unachievable to us. It's like mission impossible. So we had to make the mission impossible possible, and it turns into be a challenge. So we work through like steps to navigate a lot of restructuring to make it successful again. The goal is again margin improvement so that they can potentially transfer it to another PE holder or move it into another fund potentially from that perspective. So
Mm.
that's themes that I've seen. The other theme I've seen is and again correlating back to HR a little bit is the theme I've seen is PEs have done a really good job of selling the strategy behind scale up. But what independent groups need to understand is can they execute on it, right?
Mm.
So typically, and going back to that article, right? Like we had the LBO model back in the day, which was just leverage, taking advantage of leverage to operational, and then now the future is different. Is it's been more like okay, we have the power of economies of scale. So okay, let's collectively grow and combine things and put things together and scale it and grow. It's a good vision, it's a good direction, but I tend to see them scour for talent at the
Mm.
last minute. So typically, those who are successful in it should have an established track record of doing that over time.
Mm-hmm.
But what they end up when they go to market, they end up getting talent that don't know how to do that. So they're selling the right vision and strategy, but then they don't have the talent to do that.
Mm.
Talent's busy doing something else.
Mm.
So those are things that providers just need to be careful of. Like, you're not hiring the brand all the time. You're hiring the talent that's supporting the brand.
Mm-hmm.
Is the talent going to produce what the brand is actually dictating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some PEs do a good job at it, and some PEs just totally struggle. And it's more like, I feel like it's now 80-20. 20 do a good job, 80% fail to do a good job.
So
So
what is the talent? Tell me from your perspective, what is the talent that's needed?
hyperscale growth and aggressive M&A and
Mm.
aggressive you know peace building together, and it has to be done strategically the right way. It has to be done by operators, not bankers. So that's key. Bankers may have a right model to put on paper, but when it comes to reality, they have to see how the entire strategy gets executed well,
Mm-hmm.
getting into the weeds, getting into the value stream of each and every segment of the business, from the clinic front desk to the clinic MA support, to every single phase of the business. And once you get involved deeply and intimately into the business area, you realize it's actually a chessboard, not a checkers board. So you had to get back in and see, okay, what is needed to navigate through this seamlessly from that perspective. And from a bigger picture, I would say it's more like, how do you keep your team motivated to keep
Mm.
producing the quality and the throughput? How can you keep people engaged with the same vision and goal? So, commoditizing the roles is not a solution, and that's typically what approach I've seen PEs take.
Mm-hmm.
And it's failed. And 20% do it well, 80% actually just think that they could just hire anybody and put them in place and call it a day, and things will just go in the right direction autonomously.
Mm.
So I feel like there's a big opportunity there, and there's an opportunity of a strategy innovation around there, where a group can come in and take over that process and revolutionize that, and not have bankers step into that
Mm.
space and
Yeah.
do something that operators are good at.
Mm. So it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying that there needs to be that practices need to be integrated better into a bigger picture, and not just kind of bolted on. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely. I think integrated better. Teams have to be cohesive, connected. And this is just from experience speaking. When I jump in, I see a lot of simple things that could just create engagement well within the teams. I'm like, why why bifurcate the corporate versus the staff?
Mm.
We're one team. We're all part of a one team trying to grow and scale the business the right way. So take the power of one and collectively work together to do it. You know, it's like, sometimes I sense like people are taking learnings from like enterprises, large enterprises, and bringing it down to the mid market segment, but that doesn't work. It doesn't work. It requires a little bit of fine tuning, a little bit of partnership,
Mm.
being involved in the process. That takes it to the next level.
Yeah. At the end of the day, from my perspective, and I appreciate you talking about the people angle, is everything is people, right? In healthcare, we're not manufacturing washing machines here. We are having human to human interaction. The revenue generating process is a doctor with a patient with staff, and it's a very human thing. And when you develop a relationship with private equity, outside investment, you immediately change incentives, you change communication, you change structure, and human beings, they don't like change, and change changes their motivation. I'm curious, you know, do you believe that provider productivity is at risk when they lose a lot of their equity stake in their business and they give it to, an outside investor? Is that a big problem, and how can that be addressed?
So I think that is a big problem, actually, and it's something that's kind of on the fence, right?
Mm,
When I say it's on the fence, is you get both ends of the spectrum. Uh, I've seen providers that have sold and have satisfied their pockets, and they're like, okay, now I just don't care about being as productive as much as I was in the
mhm,
past. So that's typically like, and I'm not saying it's majority of the case. I would say I've seen that in some occasions, uh, and I think it's like, that value proposition should have been established from the get-go. There's ways to mitigate that,
yeah.
right? And the other angle I see is that the providers see the partnership being a great partnership and do not cash out of the process, and realize that they're now going into a burnout capacity and having to work out extremely crazy and unprofessionally than what they were before, attempting to retain their equity stake in
Mm,
the process because they did not fully cash out on their model earlier on. So, an advice to providers, in my opinion, is that cash out in the beginning,
mm,
and then your terms can be dictated in the future. You can be the most productive provider, or you can choose not to be the most productive provider, but at least you're on the winning end. You have the options to choose from
mm,
that perspective. I also sense that, I think the entire, and this is why I wrote the article, was the PE landscape is changing. It's moving to a more entrepreneurial setting, and everyone will have skin in the game. From that perspective, they'll be able to deliver what they're doing. So it's more like more entrepreneurial. Let's try to drive growth, success, and everyone's in it to win it. From that perspective, so I sense that we're going to have like a little bit of a hybrid of
mhm,
what I just stated, somewhere in the middle, somewhere where things meet in the middle, where there's a win-win
mm,
situation. But I personally truly feel like healthcare has been a space where, scale up is great, but there has to be an understanding that the providers are your enterprise value,
mm,
right? Yeah, without them, it's like, how do you generate revenue
yeah.
in healthcare? You generate revenue because doctors are seeing patients. If they reduce that volume, the revenue deteriorates.
Mhm,
So how do you keep providers engaged? How do you keep them happy? How do you keep them moving and chugging along in that journey until they choose to retire? And then have a good funnel of rotating providers that are willing to take on that function over time, so that business model keeps thriving and the legacy gets retained in a positive way from the provider centric. And from a business standpoint, it's like, how do you retain your patient charts?
mm,
That's all about that, right? The provider leaves, goes and finds something else to do. The patients will follow if they're in the same
mm,
demographics or similar demographics. So it's more like, the whole mindset should be to keep the provider and the independent doctor inclusive of this model long term.
Yeah. Well, cool. I agree. I think that is so key to success. Whether you're a small practice, let's say you're one doctor, engage your staff. If you're the largest roll up investment group with multiple specialties, engage your practices, engage, the physicians. Again, going back to it's all about people, it's all about motivating and being transparent and listening, right? And I love that we talked about engaging and creating an integration model that taps into the knowledge and the entrepreneurial spirit of the people that got involved in the enterprise to begin with, because that's, human motivation is what's going to get us, the success that we're looking for, whether you're independent or your investment.
The margin improvement is going to be easy in the future. The reason I say that is because AI is coming in, and robotics, AI, everything is coming in. And the more I'm looking at products and solutions out there, I'm seeing more innovation. I'm seeing more economies of scale. So it's not all about human capital economies of scale. It's also about what tools are you
Oh
using
yeah.
to economically scale your business. So that's why the article at the end kind of emphasizes that entrepreneurship is also going to leverage these technologies, to help create that margin improvement in the businesses on a go forward. So now it's like, how do you take care of your providers? How do you take care of people that are serving the providers and move it to the next level? This is the goal, right? It's take care of them. The other solutions will be saving money through the alternative efficiency tools that are coming out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually just on a call with a business owner who has a dedicated AI um, guru, and this AI guru he's been tasked with how can I operationally improve every aspect of this business, from hiring to just how I manage. And one example was he's trying to create a system where the everyone on his team gets a phone call, let's say once a week, from an AI bot, and you pick up and the bot asks you, "Hey, what's going on? What are you working on?" You give a verbal response, or maybe I get my own AI to answer the call, and then that AI hears what you have to say and it distills it for the owner so that he can catch up on KPIs and project status and everything like that. And this is something that, yeah, it's going to have hiccups and stuff, but it's going to get there. And how we can leverage that all across healthcare, I think, is
I
exactly
think,
what.
like, I would say next year, like late next year, is going to be the finance of AI, pretty much. It's been rolling out to sales, marketing, and different functions, but finance will be heavily in AI. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where, I think why is it important to have AI in finance is to get quick analysis,
Yep.
quick answers, because people want to make decisions. People don't want to wait for days to just generate some model that tells them a story that they could align with. They want to check in with the reality check, like, okay, am I making money?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have enough cash position in the bank? What can I do with this? Can I probably just generate a new revenue stream doing this? So having used some of these tools in the recent past, I feel like once it takes off, it's like, okay, all the tools are at your fingertips now. The humans and the talent needs to understand if they're engaged and they want to be part of this journey and grow and scale in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I've really enjoyed the chat. We've talked about how doctors can be smart when they're thinking about selling their practice and knowing their financial position so they don't get taken advantage of. We talked about revenue cycle management, great way, ways to structure that. I loved when you said be business minded, right? Even if you just want to be status quo, you need to have professional help so that you can make sure you're leveraging all these things that come along, or else that business that's providing sustainable income, that's going to go away at some point because other entrants in the market are just going to, eat your lunch. And we've had some really good conversation about how private equity can integrate better and think about their time horizon differently to be more profitable. And of course, AI can't not talk about AI. So Mitt, if anyone on the call here wants to get in touch with you and tap into your knowledge, how can they best get in touch with you?
Yeah, they just reached me out on LinkedIn. I'll respond.
Okay.
Pretty connected. I think LinkedIn is a good tool to network and connect. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot out there, and I'm part of several fractional groups and connections to help folks build and get connected to the right tools for their practices to help them succeed. So if anyone needs any advice, I can connect them to people like you, to other folks. I think the value is in having a network of connections who know how to scale correctly, do the right thing, and then take it to the next level. So networking is the most powerful thing. So
Yeah.
always help each other out and grow together.
Sounds great. Well, y'all, please reach out to Mitt if you have any questions about your practice or your business, because he really is holistic in how he looks at things, and I think we've kind of demonstrated that here in this conversation. So thank you everybody for joining. If you have questions, even after this, drop them into the LinkedIn, and we will see those. But this has been just another great conversation that I love having on these healthcare leadership podcasts and shows. If you want to hear more of this, I have a backlog of videos. I will be releasing my backlog as a podcast in the near future, and so you can look forward to hearing Mitt on your phone here soon. And everyone else that I've had a chance to chat with, we've had some great conversations about wellness and leadership that I think have been excellent. And so please stay tuned. Follow me on LinkedIn. Drop a comment in the chat if you want to hear more. But thanks, everybody. This has been Healthcare Leadership Live. Thank you, Mitt.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to end the